Tonight, on First at 9 this Sunday, the 23rd of November 2025. To be or not to be? Samaga Jana Balawegaya pushes for reunification with the UNP. Opposition leader yet to officially comment. Strong as one. Sri Lanka Day set for December. President urges minority parties to back national unity efforts. The dark side. AI may replace fintech and ICT entry-level jobs, warns the World Bank. UNDP calls for focus on vulnerable communities in digital initiatives within Sri Lanka. Weather alert. Heavy rains expected in several regions. Persistent conditions affect over 1,700 people island-wide.
Kalin baby so rupiyal 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on the Derana News channel. I'm Aditya Singh joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world, brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms, recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. On your top story tonight, efforts to remove the debris from the catastrophic landslide in Kadugannawa have been hampered by the rocky terrain at the site. Meanwhile, as the incessant rains accompanied by strong gusty winds continue to affect over 1,700 people across 10 districts, the Meteorological Department anticipates the heavy rains to continue in the upcoming days.
A devastating landslide crashed down onto a restaurant and an adjacent residence in the Kadugannawa area along the Colombo Kandy main road yesterday morning. The tragedy was captured by a CCTV camera affixed to a shop located directly opposite the scene. Inside the restaurant at the time were customers, restaurant staff and residents, all of whom were buried beneath the debris. Residents of the area, police officers and army personnel swiftly launched a rescue effort, working tirelessly for more than 11 hours despite heavy rain. Tragically, 6 people lost their lives while 4 survivors were pulled from the rubble and rushed to hospital. The remains of the victims were sent to the Kegol General Hospital for post-mortem examinations. The 4 injured survivors continue to receive treatment at the Mavanalla Base Hospital. The efforts to clear the debris resumed this morning. However, progress has been slowed by the enormous tuck obstructing the site. Experts from the National Building Research Organization inspected the location today. However, they are yet to determine whether chemical agents or explosives should be used to break apart the rock. Although the Kandy railway line runs along the top of the same rocky terrain, investigations have confirmed that the collapse poses no threat to railway operations. Given the severe risk posed by the incident, the Colombo Kandy main road between the Ganethana junction and Kadugannawa remained closed throughout the day today. Meanwhile, a separate section of the same road about 1 kilometer towards Kandy from the site of the landslide has also collapsed. With conditions still unstable, authorities decided that the road must remain closed for traffic in the coming days. Taking the current situation into account, the National Building Research Organization confirmed that the landslide warnings issued for 10 districts remain in effect. Meanwhile, amid continuous rainfall brought on by the prevailing atmospheric disturbance affecting several regions of the island, the Irrigation Department reports minor flooding in the vicinity of 3 major reservoirs. According to the department, low-level flooding persists along the Millakanda stretch of the river Kalu. The Baddegama area has also been inundated by floodwaters of the Ging River. Officials caution the public to remain vigilant as rising water levels are also possible in the Magura River, a tributary of the Kalu River, as well as the Dadruoya in Moragaswavel and the Attanagaluoya in Dunamale. Meanwhile, as the river Ging continues to overflow, low-lying regions and access roads across Baddegama, Dorangoda, Mapalagama, Nagoda, Unanvitiya and surrounding areas in the Gold district remain inundated. Adverse weather conditions continue to affect the Matara district, with rivers continuing to overflow, leading to heavy flooding in the area. The recently reconstructed riverbank along the Kiramara Oya at Sapugoda was unable to withstand the force of the rising water and has ruptured in several sections. In response to ongoing rainfall, spill gates at multiple reservoirs have been opened. Meanwhile, the Department of Meteorology forecasts that the prevailing rainy conditions are expected to persist over the coming days. Against this backdrop, the Disaster Management Centre notes that 1,740 persons of 487 families across 10 districts remain severely affected subsequent to the prevailing incessant rains.
ඔබේ සම හඳුනාගෙන ඖෂධීය ශාකසාරමය Forever face wash එකක් භාවිතා කරන්න.
අප වෙනුවෙන් කැපවූ ලංකාවේ අපේ අංක එකේ ජාලය ඩයලොග්. දවටනේ නියම මිල සඳහන් ස්විස් ටෙක් නිෂ්පාදන මිලදී ගන්න. ස්විස් ටෙක් ගන්න ඕන හොඳම තීරණය.
And in other local developments, President Dissanayake calls on all Sri Lankans to respect every community in the country while reaffirming the inalienable right of all citizens to live free. At a special meeting preceding Sri Lanka Day to be celebrated this December, the President vowed to never again let Sri Lanka fall prey to communal disharmony.
Empowered by the vision to create a harmonious Sri Lanka, bolstered by intercommunal understanding, efforts are underway to celebrate Sri Lanka Day this December. As December draws closer, a special meeting on Sri Lanka Day was held at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday. At the meeting, President Anura Dissanayake urged opposition parties representing Tamil and Muslim communities to facilitate the government's efforts to foster intercommunity cohesion. President Dissanayake also emphasized that every citizen of the country must have the freedom to live while respecting all religious and cultural identities. He went on to affirm that the government will not allow Sri Lanka to be divided along racial lines ever again. Hailing the government's efforts to organize Sri Lanka Day as an imperative initiative, all party leaders and representatives present at the meeting vowed to support the government's efforts to bolster peaceful intercommunity relations. At the same meeting, party leaders also promised to extend their support to the government's anti-narcotic drive titled A Nation United.
We are preparing to organize a festive season where all Sri Lankans can come together, share a laugh and celebrate national harmony. We have spoken with all Muslim and Tamil politicians in the opposition because even though we have political differences, we can still work as Sri Lankans to develop the country while fostering peace.
Now, Minister of Rural Development, Social Security and Community Empowerment, Professor Upali Panilage, emphasizes the importance of community participation in rural development. He made this comment at a recent information session on the government's Praja Shakti Rural Development Initiative.
A meeting was held at Temple Trees yesterday to inform all divisional secretaries regarding the Praja Shakti National Program launched by the government to ensure social empowerment and equitable distribution of economic benefits within society. The President's Media Division said the need for reform in the public service, the role of divisional secretaries in development, the introduction of digital systems and spaces in the Praja Shakti program, the role of divisional secretaries in the digital economy, and their active participation in the A Nation United national mission to eliminate bribery, corruption and narcotics were discussed at the meeting.
You can play a significant role within this program launched to achieve medium-term economic goals. Budgetary allocations worth 180 billion rupees fall under your purview. Allocations have been made through the budget. But if those investments are to bear fruit, they must take root at the grassroots. Citizens look to us public servants to fulfill this responsibility. The first goal of this program is to provide a national leadership to the Rural Poverty Elimination Program. Instead of individual entities attempting to alleviate poverty in isolation, a unified approach will be introduced. Secretaries to ministries directly involved in poverty alleviation and chief secretaries of provincial councils will form the top level of the unified structure. We believe that a participatory development approach must be followed. The productivity and efficiency of poverty alleviation programs must be monitored with public participation.
Several farmers across the country have expressed their displeasure over the delay of fertilizer subsidies that were approved by the government a few months ago. Paddy cultivation for the Maha season is currently underway across the country, and many farmers' unions have revealed that only a quarter of the approved fertilizer subsidies have been provided to farmers thus far. Meanwhile, maize farmers in Polonnaruwa allege that the approved fertilizer subsidies have been reduced by the current government. In another related development, farmers cultivating green chilies raise concern on considerable price fluctuations within the chili market that threaten to further impoverish the already penurious farming community.
Do what you do, let the world look up to you. Shoot what you see, be who you wanna be. Search with a smile, create your own style. Gemini Live, make moments come alive. Be anywhere, rock anytime. With awesome AI by your side. Be anywhere, rock anytime. Be brilliant, be always intelligent. Download fast, stream it all night. One tap, move, everything feel right. Snap it clean, edit like a pro. Smarter with Gemini, let the magic flow.
Introducing Samsung Galaxy A17 5G. The power to be always intelligent.
මූසහ ෆීනික්ස් නත්තල් ෆේස්ටා නොවැම්බර් 13 සිට 16 දක්වා අනුරාධපුර ස්පොට්නික් ක්‍රීඩා පිටියේදී.
Welcome back. Now in your political updates, a meeting of the Samagijana Balawegaya was held today, chaired by opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, during which party members had unanimously called for the SJB to unite with the United National Party. Although opposition leader Premadasa is reported to have announced his intention to form an alliance between the two parties, he is yet to publicly confirm the reports.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa chaired a discussion on Samagijana Balawegaya's future political actions today in Thalawathugoda, during which the party's electorate organisers for the years 2025 and 2026 were also appointed.
We must only accept the best deal for the country. The previous government did not take the deal that was best for the country, and the JVP-led government, which promised to alter the deal, is treading along the same path.
Following the meeting, party members spoke to the media.
Definitely. All party members and parliamentarians request an alliance with the UNP. Relevant discussions are ongoing. Our leader emphasized that he will take the responsibility of forming the alliance with the UNP. It will be done very soon. At one point in his speech, our leader humbly accepted that he made a mistake. I believe he was alluding to us not uniting with the UNP. From today onwards, we can start to think anew. Our leader publicly informed us of his intention to unite with the UNP, and we consented unanimously.
Now, leader of the Savajana Balaya, parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira, calls for entrepreneurship to be taught formally in school to foster a much-needed entrepreneurial attitude among all Sri Lankans. Speaking at an event in Wadduwa, Jayavira pointed to the lack of an entrepreneurial attitude within the state sector to be the key impediment to entrepreneurship within Sri Lanka.
The annual general meeting of the All Island Banquet Hall Owners and Caterers Association was held in Wadduwa yesterday. Leader of Sarvajana Balaya, parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira, graced the event as its chief guest.
At other events like this, industry-specific concerns are often raised. All these issues and challenges loom over entrepreneurs because the state lacks an entrepreneurial mindset. That is why we reiterate the need to nourish an entrepreneurial attitude among all Sri Lankans. We need that entrepreneurial attitude to usher in progress while pushing entrepreneurs forward. There may have been much discourse on various political and social concerns post-independence. However, this discourse never took root. We have now initiated this conversation. None of you here, and I know this with certainty, have ever been taught entrepreneurship formally. I too never learnt it. We became entrepreneurs accidentally. Our society has not matured enough to grasp the importance of entrepreneurship. However, we must reach that maturity. To that end, we must formally educate children on entrepreneurship from kindergarten onwards. If we do this right, within the system of free education itself, we can create job-creating graduates as opposed to unemployed Dropping a bombshell allegation, leader of the National Freedom Front, Wimal Weerawansa, accused the government of introducing a controlled price for medicines in order to allow Indian medicines to monopolize the market, pursuant to one of the agreements signed with India. Weerawansa raised concern that this will push higher quality medicines out of the Sri Lankan market.
The group in power claimed they would only need 6 months to restore this country after securing the premiership and forming a cabinet. The IMF says we must have $15 billion in reserve by 2027. How much do we have now? Only 6.2 billion, and that too is in danger of being depleted. A new tax on immovable assets will be imposed from 2027. The health minister recently introduced a controlled price for medicines. You might think that will allow medicines to be purchased at fair prices. Before this government came to power, only medicines that meet British standards could be imported into Sri Lanka. What did this government do? For the first time in Sri Lankan history, they approved the importation of medicines that meet Indian standards in accordance with one of the 7 agreements signed with India. Only 30 countries accept the Indian standard for medicines. Now they will set the control price to allow Indian medicines to monopolize the market at the expense of medicines that meet British and American standards. Afterwards, only medicines of Indian quality will be available for Sri Lankans to purchase. Did even the worst government of the past 76 years commit such a heinous act? There are medicine and equipment shortages in hospitals, but the government has allocated $40 million worth of state funds to import 1,775 double cabs. They have hung bundles of grass everywhere because they think that is what those who voted for them should eat.
And now here's a look at views expressed by the government and the opposition regarding the recent opposition rally in Nugegoda.
Was there a rally? No one seemed to take it seriously. There wasn't a rally. It was just them shouting. The government tried to sabotage the rally in numerous ways, but in doing so inadvertently gave a considerable publicity for the rally. As a result, a significant amount of people attended the rally. The government must understand that they are losing their grip on power. What other government will claim power if the present one is ousted? Who will it comprise? Do you think all of them will unite to form a government? It will be a mess. People voluntarily attended the rally without any great effort on the part of the organizers. The government thought people wouldn't rally against them right now. The next rally will be organized by us. We are a strong opposition. We invite the others to join us. Shouldn't he attend? He must have understood the reality that Namal was only a hit because we were not in attendance. Loudspeakers were taken down, power was interrupted, and numerous insults were hurled. This demonstrates that the government was afraid. I believe the rally was successful.
Another news, the Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka, Chi Zhenghong, reaffirms Beijing's strong commitment to deepening its partnership with Sri Lanka. Joining the briefing on the 4th plenary session of the 20th Communist Party of China Central Committee, highlighting what he described as a long-standing traditional friendship, the ambassador said China and Sri Lanka are fellow travelers on the path towards development and revitalization. He notes that the successful visits to China by President Dissanayake and Prime Minister Amarasuriya earlier this year resulted in significant agreements that now provide new strategic direction for bilateral relations. China, he said, is ready to expand cooperation across key sectors including the port economy, modern agriculture, digital economy, clean energy and tourism under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. The ambassador added that China remains committed to supporting Sri Lanka's socio-economic growth and working towards what he called China-Sri Lanka community with a shared future. World Bank economist Dr. Jonah Rexer cites new findings indicating that 20% of jobs in South Asia are exposed to growing influence of artificial intelligence, which is already reshaping labor markets in developing countries. He notes that many entry-level jobs in fintech and ICT are particularly vulnerable to AI-driven replacement, widening the gap between emerging job demand and the qualification of job market seekers. Meanwhile, UNDP country economist for Sri Lanka, Dr. Vagisha Gunasekara, citing Sri Lankan data, suggests that despite advances in technology adoption, digital public infrastructure must better reach low-income and rural communities to achieve truly inclusive growth.
An event organized by the Center for Poverty Analysis in collaboration with the World Bank titled Trade, Artificial Intelligence and Labor Markets in South Asia was held in Colombo recently.
Let's start with growth prospect. The region remains, as it has been for the past several quarters, the fastest growing emerging market region in the world. And South Asia, that is going to grow on average about 6% in 2026. That's based on our kind of internal World Bank GDP forecasts. That being said, it does represent a slight growth slowdown from what we observed in 2025. The growth in the working age population in basically every region of the world has kind of dramatically outpaced the growth in employment opportunities. That's particularly true in South Asia. So really South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, which is have this massive jobs challenge where there are kind of millions of young people entering the labor market and ultimately not enough jobs to absorb all of those job seekers. Why hasn't increases in income in South Asia translated into broader kind of increases in life satisfaction when you measure those in surveys? And ultimately we argue that it has something to do with this jobs problem, that growth actually hasn't generated enough employment to absorb all of the job seekers, particularly the young people who are entering the labor market right now. What will the labor market implications of AI adoption be in South Asia? In South Asia, you can see the countries. In certain countries like Bhutan and Nepal, adoption is very low. In other countries, including Sri Lanka, adoption is on the higher end of the spectrum. So in Sri Lanka, adoption is about 10%, which is higher than the emerging market average. All this is to say that there are these substantial kind of digital gaps between developed and developing countries, which I think is kind of understandable, but this adoption thing is happening really quickly, and it's going to affect both the emerging and advanced economies. And so it's about 20% of jobs in South Asia that are exposed to AI. That's a little bit lower than other emerging markets where the numbers are closer to 30, because the level of skills and kind of cognitive tasks in the labor market tend to be a little bit lower in South Asia. Who is most likely to be affected in the labor market? And there you see this pretty clear upward sloping relationship where more skilled jobs tend to have higher levels of AI exposure. And there you see kind of automation potential really peaks around 15 years of education. Those are the workers that tend to be most exposed to automation specifically, and then it falls pretty rapidly after that. So workers with college degrees or with higher levels of education tend to be much less exposed to automation. And so when we look at the types of sectors that kind of show up as highly exposed sectors, I think it makes a lot of sense. You see finance is highly exposed with a lot of substitutable jobs. So think about like low-level equity analysts or doing basic research on investments in companies. Those are jobs that are already beginning to be automated by AI. ICT is another one with a relatively high level of overall exposure. In contrast, when you look at real estate and education, those are the two sectors with the highest level of value added that's complementary to AI.
From the perspective of this report, these are labor market and trade infrastructure. DPI lowers transaction costs, improves matching, and makes it easier for people to move across firms and across their traditional and modern divide. If DPI is supposed to be rails for AI and trade, we need to look at whose rails currently reach. About 39% of the households still lack internet. Women face a 34% gap in internet use in regional comparisons. Persons with disabilities, 7% internet use. So our foundational rails are literally missing in the communities that most need inclusive growth. So COVID era education already showed us this pattern. Children in better off, better educated households were more likely to receive online education than those in poor households. Same pattern will repeat in adult reskilling, in job searches, in access to e-government and digital finance, unless DPI, the digital public infrastructure, is explicitly designed to reach the low-income, rural, estate households, the periphery of this economy, not just the middle class.
That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.